It's time to talk about the best of 2024 and what's to come for 2025.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, it's going to be the best of 2024 with the Blues, a little year in review. Obviously, what's ahead for 2025, and then setting the tone. So we have a lot to get into. I am still mixing up the fact that it is 2025 and not 2024, but I am excited to talk about some better moments since it's been a little bit negative lately for the Blues. Also, I want to let you know that you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, yes, it is officially 2025. The Blues, they do play tonight, coming off of a huge win against the Chicago Blackhawks in the Winter Classic. So it was a great event. Obviously, it was on New Year's Eve, which I was not a fan of, but the Blues are going to be hosting the Ottawa Senators. So again, a game that the Blues should win, but Ottawa's been a little bit sneaky this season. I'm not going to lie to you. So it should be a good battle between the two teams. But anyways, let's talk about this past year. 2024, it was something, right? I think most importantly, the way that the Blues ended the year was kind of how I was most excited about it, right? But this is the end of the year ballot because there is a lot of players that I do want to talk to you about. And I think for me, right, as a Blues fan, as somebody that maybe is a little bit more frustrated than a spectator just watching the Blues randomly. I didn't want to do this one because I had a really difficult time maybe grading different players and coaches. So I wanted to do it a little bit more generic. So the most improved. Now, Robert Thomas, the Tank Engine, huge fan of that Twitter account, said Bolduc and Perunovic sometimes. And here's the thing. When it comes to Scott Perunovic, I understand both sides of the conversation. You see, while I do think Scott Perunovic shouldn't be on the team, he has I don't see, like, I have a hard time saying that he improved. I don't think that he really has improved because he's not playing. I mean, they're playing Tyler Tucker. I'm not really understanding the Scott Perunovic love. Zach Bolduc, I haven't seen enough from him. And that's a player that had big expectations heading into the season. Doug Yeh said it best that he wanted to see, Zach be like a top 6 player, top 6 forward on the team. And I have to be honest with you, I never felt that way about him. I understand that he has the potential, and I understand that he sometimes does play that way, but it's not all the time. It's not consistent enough. So I can't say, yeah, this is a top 6 forward. I always said he's a third or fourth line type of player, and that's not an insult. I think it's important to have good players on your third and fourth line. I think that is a huge, huge, huge thing that kind of gets ignored sometimes, right? You're always focused on that first line, making sure that's your most dominant line. And then the second line usually, takes a lot of priority too. But the problem with these teams and GMs and, the moves that they make is they're not necessarily always thinking about the third and fourth line as a priority. So when you have a player that plays really good hockey and you can put him in that line, that to me is an advantage. So for that, I completely understand. All right. The biggest disappointment, um, Boosh, this is from Robert Thomas, the Tank Engine. Boosh, Schenn, Folk, Binnington. See, I can't say I'm disappointed in Binner just because I still feel like he is one of the better goalies in the National Hockey League. I do. I think that it's sometimes the defense around him that makes him not look as good as he is. And I hope that makes sense. When it comes to Bush, listen, Bushy, he's not scoring the way that I expect him to, but I mean, he's still making and generating plays, so I can't be too mad. Braden Schenn, this is always a debate with people, right? Because Schenner is one of those players that isn't going to always get you the points, but he is a good leader. He is good at setting up plays, I would say. Good on the face off. That's something that he excels in. So I can't say I'm disappointed in him, only for the fact that I feel like he's doing what he was supposed to do. And then Justin Folk, I mean, he did have a good game in the Winter Classic. He's just so inconsistent. Obviously a great player, but the inconsistency sometimes does show. Another question I asked was grade Monty. So the options were A, B, C, and then the last option was D/F. And he got 38% with an A, B1 at 55%, C at 5.6, and D and F got 0. So I think Jim Montgomery is a good coach. It was so cool. He actually answered a question after the Winter Classic in French. So I was like, yeah, let's go, Monty. But I think that it's still very early. And again, a coach can only be good. A coach can only make a team so good as the talent that's on the team. And I think that Coach Montgomery came into a really awkward situation with the Blues. I think that the Blues are lacking talent. We've talked about this, you and I. And for Coach Montgomery, I think that the work that needs to be done isn't necessarily with this current team. Okay? And I just want you to understand this for a second. It's not with this current team. He needs to get maybe some different players on the team that then he can work with. I think that this current team right now doesn't have the talent, no matter who the coach. But again, that is why we're going to have the whole segment on what's to come for 2025. Another question that I asked is, will the Blues trade a big name player? 36% of you said yes, and 63% of you said no. You see, this is my thing, okay? I think the only way for the Blues to become a better team is if they do make a trade. And I was thinking back to this summer, right? When I was thinking about to like the best of 2024, right? And one of the biggest things that they did was the offer sheets to Edmonton when they were able to acquire Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. So that was a big thing. So I think that Dougie A does have what it takes to do that. But then I think about the draft and drafting Adam Juracek. And it was such a humbling experience being able to interview Adam Juracek at the draft in Las Vegas, at least for me, representing the St. Louis Blues, with my podcast, Locked On Blues, and heading out to Las Vegas and really taking a gamble on, my career was absolutely phenomenal. I was able to be with the team twice in 2024, once in March and then once in October, hung out with Jamie Rivers and the crew, and I was able to interview a bunch of Blues players, I think 20 in total. And, having Braden Schenn even recognize the podcast and doing the voice over for the intro was such a cool experience. I know that the Blues were really close to getting that wild card spot last season, and they made it to game 80 out of 82 in contention still. So there was a lot of positive. For me, I had a great year doing this podcast, but I want to do a podcast with a playoff team. So let's talk about what needs to be done in 2025 for our Blues to be in the playoffs. But first, let's talk about FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love being able to watch which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. So just visit fanduel.com to join today. That's fanduel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One thing about me is I like to set goals. I have personal goals. I have a New Year's resolution to go on a cruise, which I get told is not a real goal. But let's talk about how these goals can be related to the St. Louis Blues and goals that this team and this organization should have for the upcoming year. Because right now, it's January 3rd. The Blues play their first game of 2025 tonight. And I think that this is a pivotal month for the Blues. You see, back when we won the Stanley Cup in that January, we were the worst team in the West. Okay. It sucked. But the Blues were able to just continue to win and bounce back. And it just was a phenomenal, streak that they had going. I think that right now, there's teams that I am worried about, okay? There's no denying that. I mean, the Colorado Avalanche have been really good lately, and they were a team that I was kind of like, oh, maybe they're not as good this season. I was doubting the Avs. I was. And now I am a little bit nervous about the Avalanche and their win streak, okay? They have won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, okay? Which is making me kind of nervous considering the fact that they did beat the Winnipeg Jets in one of those games. Right now, the Central Division, it doesn't look like the Blues, based on how things are going, will be in that top 4. It doesn't look like that. You have the Jets with 56 points. Okay? 56 points. You have the Minnesota Wild, who honestly surprised me this season, 52 points. Then you have the Avs creeping up with 48 points, the Stars with 47, Utah with 40, Blues with 40. But the only difference is Utah has 17 wins and 15 losses and 6 OTL. The Blues have 18 wins, 17 losses, and 4 OTL. So that's why. The Preds have 29 points and Chicago has 26 points. So if the Blues want to get anywhere, they need desperately to be in the position that the Stars are in. Do I think they're going to do that? I don't know. They're back by quite a bit. And that is what makes me nervous. So you might be wondering, compared to the rest of the NHL, how competitive is the Central? As I stated, it is the most competitive division. You have 2 teams with 50 plus points, okay? Which, again, is something to be concerned about. I know the Metropolitan does too, but the difference is that the Central just has better hockey teams, and that's the reality of it. I said this before. I don't know when I last said this, but when it comes to the NHL, I believe that the West is the best. Meaning that I feel like the teams right now in the current NHL are just better when it comes to Western hockey. But it doesn't really seem like to me that the Blues could be a wild card team. They could be, right? Above the Blues, it's Utah, Calgary, Vancouver's in the second spot, Dallas is in the first. I think that St. Louis is a better team than Utah. I think they're a better team than the Flames. Canucks, I don't know. The Canucks are tricky. Dallas, I don't know. So this is the Blues' task for January. It is to accumulate as many wins as possible. I know that's the goal every single month, and it's a good goal to have, right? You should be wanting to win every single possible game. But the Blues have, I don't want to say a relatively easy schedule, but they're taking on the Senators tonight on home ice. Then they're going to go to Columbus tomorrow to take on the Blue Jackets. Then they're in Minnesota with the Wild, so that's an automatic L. And then they're hosting the Ducks, which they should win. Hosting the Blue Jackets, which they should win. Flames are hosting. Kind of should win that game. It's weird, by the way. They're hosting the Flames, and this is how the NHL schedule is so weird. Twice, like back-to-back games with a day in between. So yeah, weird. So 2 games with the Flames that they're hosting. Then they're in Utah. Then they're in Vegas. Then they're hosting Vegas. Then they're hosting Dallas, which is going to be a great game. Then they're hosting the Canucks. And then finally they're in Colorado at the Avalanche. So January is a busy month with a mix of some easier games and then a mix of some more difficult games. But for whatever reason, they play their best hockey against the Dallas Stars. And it's been like that for quite a while. So I know personally I'm excited for that. But I think that right now, as a Blues fan, you just have to hope that they come out of January with above 500, which is the goal, honestly. But I think a realistic goal too is if the Blues don't make the playoffs, it's going to be disappointing. And right now, they wouldn't be in it if the playoffs were to happen today. They wouldn't. So what is the goal for this team? And that's what I maybe struggle with is as much as I want them to win, because I don't want to ever have my team lose. But should I maybe be hoping if the Blues don't get in the playoffs that they finish in a position where they can get a good draft pick? I've talked about this before with the draft, and I know that it sounds maybe a little selfish, but I would rather the team get a good draft pick if they're not going to make it to the playoffs and not have what happened last season. You see, I like Adam Yurachek, and I did predict him to be drafted by the Blues, actually. So that was a win for me. But again, you're not, especially in this coming draft, you're not going to get a player with that much talent in the same position at 16th overall. So I think for the Blues, they really need to play some of their best hockey in this month, or just let the younger guys play, call them up and make some trades. And I'm not saying like purposely lose, but because I hate that mindset. But I also at the same time would rather the Blues get a good draft pick. And I don't think that's a selfish move to make. I actually think that's for the better of the team. I just don't understand because on paper, the Blues have talent. Cam Fowler has been playing amazing. But again, you shouldn't have to rely on a 33-ish, I guess, year old, maybe 35, I don't know. Something mid like 30s. You shouldn't have to rely on a 30-plus-year-old defenseman to make your team that much better, right? You have 39-year-old Ryan Suter that you put in a position when he was paired with Colton Parayko to be one of your top defensemen. So I guess the point that I'm trying to say is, why is it that the older players, the veterans of the league, are playing with more effort than these younger guys that should be proving themselves? I don't know. But hey, that's what's happening. I'm going to talk to you about setting the tone. But first, I want to talk to you about my friends over at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or you're paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and it saves a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, so let's talk about setting the tone. The Blues had a fantastic win, a 6-2 win in the Winter Classic. The team was fired up. Obviously, Cam Fowler had a fantastic game with his 2 goals, one on the power play, playing in his 1,000th game as well. So it was a lights out game for the Blues. You heard the Let's Go Blues chants taking over Wrigley Field. So it was a spectacular game. But this has to be what sets the tone. It has to be. When you have struggled all season long, right? You've lost to some of the worst teams in the NHL and you've played well against some of the better teams. It doesn't make sense. The Blackhawks are a really bad team. However, the Blues had the national spotlight on them and they set a tone. They played good hockey. Jordan Kyrou played great hockey. Robert Thomas played great hockey. Jordan Binnington looked fantastic in net. So you're setting the tone. You had an honor, an opportunity to play in the 2025 Winter Classic for the 3rd time. You're 3-0 in the Winter Classic. And hey, maybe for us, this is, the moment we're going to look back on this season and say, you know what, that was the best of this season. It might be. It probably will be. But that has to set the tone. And there's no other way this team can feel motivated because that's basically it. I can't even imagine, playing outside, it just looks very overwhelming. And the players did say that they felt overwhelmed and it was emotional. So that has to be what sets the tone. So there's no more excuses. There's no more. Okay? That's it. So if the Blues come out tonight and they look like trash, I will be disappointed personally because I feel like coming back from being in the Winter Classic in that type of environment and that atmosphere, you have to be fired up. So we'll see what happens against the Ottawa Senators tonight. Looking forward to a little Friday night puck drop during SmackDown. But it is what it is, the dual screens. All right, I will talk to you on Monday. And make sure to, again, follow on Twitter at Locked On Blues to stay up to date with all things St. Louis Blues. I'll talk to you later, everybody. Have a great 2025, and let's go Blues.